I spent the weekend just gone down in Poole with a couple of friends, and whilst the weather was nice and sunny enough on the Friday for a paddle in the sea and a splash about in the open air pool at the caravan park we were staying at, it absolutely tipped it down on the Saturday. Knowing in advance that the weather forecast was pretty shite and that it was going to be raining most of the day, I suggested to my mates that we pay a visit to an arcade that I'd heard about that was down that way. A quick Google later informed us that the arcade in question that I was thinking of was called High Score, which is actually part of a chain with multiple arcades located throughout the south and southwest of England. The website didn't really give much of an idea what type of arcade experience it was going to be, describing itself as a family-friendly free-play amusement centre with something for everyone. Race family and friends, challenge them to a basketball shootout, or get nostalgic on old favourites like Pac-Man. And my fear was that it was going to be one of those modern style arcades, full of redemption games and Flappy Bird cabinets. Fortunately though, this turned out not to be the case, and there was a pretty strong presence of some classic arcade titles, with a heavy emphasis on driving and light gun games. On the arcade racer front, there were games like Sega Rally 3, Outrun 2SP, GTI Club and R-Tuned. On the light gun front, they had stuff like Terminator Salvation, Luigi's Mansion, Transformers Alliance, and a version of Dead Storm Pirates Special Edition with a massive screen that I've never seen before. They also had an Afterburner Climax cabinet, which was nice to see. And there was also this gigantic Mission Impossible cabinet by Sega. I had no idea Sega had done a licensed Mission Impossible game, to be honest. It was a novel setup with 2 screens and 4 lots of dual-wheeled pistols. The opening stage which we played on, where you fight your way through a passenger train, felt so similar to Sega's Operation Ghost game, I wasn't sure if these were actually 2 different games or not. Something else that I really dug in the arcade was some game-themed tables in the cafe area. I particularly approve of the Outrun themed one here. There wasn't really much in the way of regular arcade games though. You know, the standard upright jammer cabinet stuff. But to be honest, I don't really mind that, as I'm much more interested in playing the games you get a unique experience from in the arcade. The games with giant shaking rifles or massive linked up racing cabinets, rather than something that I can easily play with a joypad on MAME at home. As such, the 4-player Sega Rally 3 cabinets were good fun. So yeah, I have got to play Sega Rally Online Arcade at home against actual human players online, and I've also got to play the actual proper arcade version of Sega Rally 3 at home in single player, using my racing wheel using Techno Parrot. But there's just something about playing against actual real life friends side by side in gigantic racing cabinets that you just can't beat, particularly as well when you can have a good laugh when one of your 44-year-old mates gets beaten by some random 8-year-old who joins in as player 4. Sadly though, one of the Outrun 2SP cabinets was out of action. Also, the crosshairs on the player 1 side of Dead Storm Pirates seemed like it was having some kind of calibration issue with the crosshairs, as they were very jittery and seemed to kind of dart all over the screen a lot. So the selection of games was good. One thing I wasn't a massive fan of though, was the time limit you had imposed on you for the duration of your visit. The general admission ticket price is £12.50 for an hour session, for both adults and children, although there was a discount available for families. With all their cabinets on free play, most of the arcade centres I've been to that charge an admission fee, with the cabinets on free play, normally let you stay for as long as you want, or they've had a cheaper tier where you pay less to stay for a set amount of time. Now, you could argue here that this is still pretty reasonable, as if you're having to pay for the games per credit, with most modern games costing, £2 per play at most, for a couple of minutes of gaming before you die, that £12.50 would vanish pretty quickly. But I don't know, only getting an hour for that just felt a little bit stingy to me, just because I had been used to unlimited playtime at other places. Although I should remember here that some of those other places that I'm thinking of were arcade bars, where you were paying for credits, so maybe they just gave the illusion of lasting longer, as the games at the arcade bars were often interspersed with drinks and chats with friends. I think 2 hours would have felt just a smidge more generous though. And besides, my mates and I are all old bastards, and would have been ready to go by the 2 hour mark anyway, as we'd all probably be getting lower back pain and be ready for a nice sit down by that point. So all in all then, an enjoyable visit to High Score Arcade in Poole, although just a tiny bit more time in there would have been nice. Anyway, time for me to shut my gob now, whilst we just have a little bit more of a look about and focus in on a few specific games. I hadn't bought any way of doing hands-free filming with me, as this was a spontaneous arcade visit, so I'm playing one-handed as I hold my phone in the cabinets I took a closer look at, so please forgive any crap gameplay demonstration on my part. Probably killed him a bit too quick. there we go, High Score Arcade in Poole. Have you ever visited it yourself? Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. I've been informed by fellow Sega-loving vintage gaming enthusiast, the Retro Martin, that there's a Daytona USA 2 cabinet in the high score at Swindon, which isn't a million miles away from where I live, so I might have to go and check that out at some point. Anyway, that's all from me today. Take care everyone, and I will catch you for another video sometime soon. Bye bye.